classics. We've been talking about it, and now it's going to happen. Our special guest appearance and conversation with two very wonderful folks. Actually, we're assuming you're wonderful because we haven't met before now, but I'm sure that'll prove accurate. We want to welcome Bruce Mahin, who is a professor of composition and music theory at Radford University. He's also a composer in his own right, and we'll probably hear some of his music in the next hour. And we have as our extra special guest the acclaimed British pianist Martin Jones, who is appearing in our area, had an appearance in Radford on Thursday night, and will be in Lexington tomorrow afternoon, at Virginia Tech on Monday night, and then on to some other locations in the mid-Atlantic. Is this a really, well, first of all, welcome. It's great to see both of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You can wear your headphones or not. It doesn't matter. I'm going to put mine on just to make sure we can hear both of you first. Is this a great big American tour for you, or just a few spotted places?
No, it's not a great big American tour. It's a sort of local tour, really. So 5-6 concerts and some master classes. And we've just finished the last 2 days doing a recording of a new CD of some new American music. So that's what it's all about.
Okay. And I want to talk about new American music and other... It's been hinted to me by your companion here that this is one of the things you're concentrating on a lot these days is discovering, uncovering, promoting, recording music of unsung composers,
Exactly.
largely unsung composers, for now and for the future, and that's something I was going to ask you a little bit later on, but I'll just ask you now. Where do you feel you are in this continuum of music that began, well, with the beginning of time, but as we think of it in the last 400 or 500 years, and where we are now, and you know where we may be hundreds of years from now? You're playing a major role in that, as I see it, by discovering these people and setting their music down for people in future generations to appreciate.
Well, that's exactly how I see it, that especially the piano, perhaps more than any other instrument, has had music written, and a lot of it has disappeared or has gone into archives and libraries or private collections and not been played since it was written. A great deal of it. It was probably played at the time once or twice and has just disappeared. So I'm very anxious to let people hear it. I'm not saying they're great masterpieces, but I'm saying that they shouldn't be totally ignored and never heard. And most of it is wonderful stuff to play. 90% of it is written by really good pianists. So it lies under the hand, it sounds good, it's good to listen to, so we should hear it. So I'm on my little quest to keep my pile of CDs rising with unknown composers. Well, not unknown composers, but unknown music by composers. I think that's how I'd put it.
Is there anything in particular you look for when you're seeking out these compositions? Any, I don't know, style or format that
Not
is
particularly.
overlooked?
No, I suppose at home we're looking into English music of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, around there, where, again, a lot of music was published, and I suppose a lot of it you'd call salon music these days, you know, with the lovely sort of Victorian titles like Trees Swaying in the Wind and Misty Afternoon and that sort of thing. But all in amongst all of that are sonatas and sets of variations and endless amounts of music. It takes sorting through. You can't, obviously there's some things that maybe shouldn't be played, but there's an awful lot that should. So I don't have any particular type of music that I'm looking for. I suppose if you really pin me down, I'd say it'd be music written by pianists, rather than.
Curious that.
No, but you know what I mean. It's music that's going to feel nice to play and learn.
Sure.
Whereas a lot of music not written by pianists can be more uncomfortable. Not that it shouldn't be played. So I suppose that's where I'm coming from.
And how are you discovering them? How do these things come to you?
Oh, various ways. Well, the internet is the obvious example of finding a name and then just seeing if old catalogues, the backs of old printed music have lists of things that have long since gone. People send me odd pieces, and sometimes someone will phone up and say, "Do you know about, John Smith?" And I said, "No, I haven't a clue." "Oh, well, I'll send you a little bit of John Smith, see what you think." And on it goes from there. And maybe I don't like John Smith, but then I might like his son or a colleague he was working with. So it works like that, really.
Now I want to get Bruce involved here. Is he an unsung composer?
He's an up-and-coming composer.
I like that.
Yeah.
You do too, don't you?
Yeah, I'll smile at that.
Okay. Well, I want to get both of you in on this whole idea of recording and collaborating. And I know the Preludes of Paris CD of Bruce's music was kind of a. You told me a little bit on the phone about how the travels between Paris and London as you worked that project through to completion. Are a lot of these people that you're discovering and the music you're discovering, are they, do you work directly with them, or do you just get a piece of music and record it, or are they sometimes present? Is it a collaborative thing when you're...
Sometimes. Most of the ones I'm dealing with aren't present anymore. They've sadly gone.
I see. Okay.
The latest one where the composer is definitely living, besides Bruce, who's still alive. Yes, there he is. Yeah. He's still there. Australian composer called Graham Hare. He's writing 12 transcendental studies and some other pieces. And we're halfway through recording his music. He's another composer who was a good pianist, so he knows his way around the piano. And no, most of them, I'm afraid, have gone. They're not around anymore.
Well, you're a good pianist, and you composed at one time, but I understand you gave that up to concentrate on performing.
I did.
Is there any story behind that?
No, I always fancied being a composer. I was, and I sort of enjoyed doing it. And do you know what it is? I'm really pleased that I experienced the feeling of sitting in front of an empty piece of manuscript paper and having to come up with something. And it sort of puts in perspective how amazing people like Bach and Mozart and all the rest, that they just did that day in, day out, and they kept it up for their whole life. They kept a standard up which was unbelievable. How did they do that? And it sort of stops me taking all that music for granted, having, in my tiny little way, been in that position. But I suppose I didn't carry on because I found I was tending to want to write poor copies of the music I was trying to play. You know, I found sort of bits of Rachmaninoff were creeping, or bits of Beethoven, or bits of, and I found it really difficult to separate what might have been my voice from all the others that I was trying to absorb and memorize.
Well, it just surprises me that anybody comes up with anything new anymore.
It is
in any form
amazing,
of music,
but
because
they do.
You do. We have all this in our heads that we've heard from the day we were born, and where do original notions come from? And maybe Bruce can talk about that, because you're doing that. Right?
Where do original notions come from? That's a really good question. And that's part of the mystery of music, isn't it? In all art, in all creative activities,
Right.
where do these ideas come from? And why do human beings have this ability? It's not an extremely practical skill, is it? I mean, it's not really something that you're going to go out and build a fire with or feed your family with. And so it's one of the real miracles of life, I think, that human beings have that. We all have that, and it always confounds me when I hear anyone say, "Well, I don't really have that creative side," but I think we all do, and it's a matter of harnessing it. And so, a big part of it really is sitting down at the piano every day with that blank paper staring you in the face and saying, "Well, I need to write some notes down on this paper." And you just start, and you write those notes, and you see where they go, and you just kind of follow them, and you let them speak to you, and you speak to them by putting more notes down on the page, and before you know it, you have some musical ideas on the paper, and then it's a matter of applying your skill and manipulating those ideas into something maybe more coherent, into a longer piece, and hopefully refining it. And then perhaps working with performers who say, well, that's nice, but, I can do this too. And so you think, well, maybe I'll incorporate that in. And that whole process is magical in many ways. It's very difficult to pin down.
It's the same with literature, though, isn't it? I mean, you go into a bookshop and you think, no one can write another whodunit. We've got thousands of them, but that's not true at all. And they keep appearing, and good ones.
Yeah.
So it's just the same with music. I mean, we've just finished this recording today. We've done 5 pieces by 5 composers who I think hardly any other music of theirs is recorded. They're all totally different voices and totally different from the 5 we did last year.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even living that far apart in one sense, but completely different. It's wonderful.
Isn't part of your program on Monday night at Virginia Tech performing some of these works by
That's right.
new composers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would Kent Holiday be one of those?
He would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have professor at Virginia Tech, Kent Holiday's music on that program, as well as a professor at Washington and Lee University, Byron Petty, will be on that concert as well.
So you'll be doing that also tomorrow at Washington and Lee.
At Washington and Lee
I guess.
tomorrow as well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that should be exciting for everybody involved.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Okay. We have one of Kent's pieces ready to go. Would you like to do some of that now?
Absolutely. What a
Okay.
good idea.
I wish do some of that. I wish we had you at the Baby Grand back in the other studio, but we'll rely on discs for the moment. And this is a piece called Toccata Diabolica. by
Diabolica.
Kent Holiday from Virginia Tech. Played, of course, by our guest Martin Jones. And there's a piece written by Virginia Tech's Kent Holliday, and it's on a CD called American Piano Music, Volume 2. That was a world premiere recording by our guest, Martin Jones. And I want to talk about the local recordings and Bruce's label and lots of things. We have Bruce Mahin from Radford University and the British pianist Martin Jones with us in the studio here at WVTF, and we have lots of things to chat about, and we'll continue doing that in just a moment.
Support for our broadcast day comes from Roanoke Natural Foods Co-op in historic Grandin Village and downtown Roanoke, connecting customers with natural, local, and organic products for 40 years. And from the Trust Company of Virginia, providing asset management, trust administration, and estate services to individuals and families throughout Virginia. The Trust Company of Virginia, tcva.com.
And we are back here at WVTF with our special guests, Martin Jones and Bruce Mahin. One of the things I had wanted to ask you, looking at your biographical material and trying to figure out, what we would talk about and who you are, and I noticed that 1968 was a significant year for you in that you won a large, impressive award in England, and you played at Queen Elizabeth Hall, and you played at Carnegie Hall. That I don't know what came before that, but I thought I'd ask you to reflect a little bit on that time in your life and how those opportunities came about and what they meant in terms of a career and a musical life, if you will.
Well, it did change things. It didn't actually suddenly fill my diary with hundreds of concerts the next year. It wasn't that sort of change. But it was more a mental change for me that I'd obviously been playing concerts and things, but that gives you a certain recognition, and it gives you the feeling that you can join in with the real pianists.
Okay.
And I think that was most of it. I think the other important thing was part of the prize was I had money to buy a grand piano.
Okay.
And of course that really did change my life. Because, often with concerts, you can play in Carnegie Hall or the Festival Hall or wherever. Sometimes those big concerts don't bring you anything. And then you play in the little village hall somewhere, and someone pops in quite by chance and says, "That was a nice concert. Will you come and play all the, And sometimes that sort of thing, I think that happens more often than not, really. Unless you're a really touring artist that's doing it 4 or 5 nights a week, that's different. So, of course, it was a wonderful experience to play in Carnegie Hall, in the Queen Elizabeth Hall. So I think that's probably what changed my life the most. It changed my attitude and gave me a nice piano, which was extremely valuable. Not so much monetary, but again, an encouragement, a way of enjoying playing. It makes a big, big difference.
All right. That's cool. Can we talk a little bit about the recording process? And Bruce, we have businesses and things in the Roanoke Valley that people don't even know about, and yet they have widespread influence. And you have a label, a classical music label, and you're recording Martin while he's here in the area. How long have you been doing this kind of thing?
Well, gosh, I guess the label has actually, the very first release that we put on the Pianova label was the American Music Piano Music Series with Martin Jones, Volume 1, and that was a couple of years ago. And we've put out a number of other recordings since, but I guess maybe one good way of rephrasing that question might be, what's a composer doing making recordings. You know, I mean, aren't composers supposed to write music and then get performers to play their music? But I think as a composer, I am particularly concerned with the need to get music of all of us, different composers, out so that people can hear it. And Martin and I were doing a tour of the United States about 4 years ago, and we were talking about what is the best way. You know, what are some of the problems with the music business from the point of view of composers and performers, and we both agreed that one of the things we needed to do was to, first of all, establish a series of recordings that would promote the music of young and new up-and-coming composers, but secondly, to take that music and get it out into the concert hall. So all of the recordings that we're doing, Martin and I, involve both the recording process, certainly, but then concert tours, so that music then gets out into the communities, so that people can hear it.
You said 3 years ago you were touring. How did your professional relationship happen? How did you discover Martin Jones, and how did he discover you? And
I think all of us, as we think about how we meet people, we could probably come up with interesting stories. And this is not.
It was Glasgow, wasn't it?
This was Glasgow.
It was Glasgow.
This was probably, I don't know how many years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and both of us have a common friend in Glasgow, Graham Hare, that whom Martin just mentioned, and we were Martin was playing a concert there, and I was there for other reasons, working with Graham, and they needed a page turner for the concert, and so I said, sure, I'll sit next to Martin Jones. Of course, I knew Martin Jones' music, I've known his music all my life, and his performances. And I thought, what a great opportunity to sit right next to the pianist himself. And so I turned pages for Martin in that concert. And then, of course, we went out afterward for a meal and got to know each other. And as they say, the rest is history.
A page turner.
Yeah.
That is a great story.
Be it ever so humble.
Of course, with my view of all this is that now I've got Bruce to write 12 Paris preludes. Mm-hmm. I now want him to write 12 Casablanca preludes and 12 Hawaiian preludes. I think there's a series there, don't you?
It's inevitable.
I think so.
And these would be solo piano works? Or
definitely.
Do you
no, the
want
two
a
of us.
Hawaiian guitar on that?
No. No. No, it's just a trip for the two of us.
Okay. Well, these preludes. How you were in Paris and he was in London? How did you approach the composition and recording of the Preludes of Paris?
Well, that was the recording was a separate thing, but I did go over to Paris and play some of them at the place you were staying at. I can't remember what it was called now, the Institute of something or other.
Cité des Arts. The City of the Arts.
City of the Arts.
It's a community of artists and musicians right in the Les Marais in Paris.
It's a brilliant setup there. They have rooms owned by different nations, and people can go there, painters and dancers, writers, composers, and they have an art gallery there and a piano, a concert hall with a little organ in it as well. And they put on works that are being produced by people that are staying in this building. So that was the first proper performance of some of the preludes, wasn't it? And then the following winter, I suppose, he got all 12 of them complete. So,
well, while I was in Paris, I set up a challenge to write one prelude per week. And so on Friday of every week, I was determined to put a prelude into the mail to Martin. And I did it, and basically got almost all 12, didn't get all 12 done in the 3 months that I was there. And so I would send these things off to Martin, and then near the end of the stay, I went up to London and stayed a few nights with Martin at his home, and we went back and forth. We went all over the pieces, and Martin shared his wisdom with me from the pianist point of view, and we made some changes and adjusted things, and then
not much.
But it was a collaborative process in a sense that here's a composer and performer working together,
right.
Each using his expertise to try to make the pieces the best they could be.
Well, and that makes me think of other fields of music where writers and performers are always complain about the producer who comes in and, obviously if you've written something, you have it in your head, and there's probably only one way that you have that in your head. And then if somebody else suggests a quicker tempo or whatever little modifications, some people are just mortified by the notion that they would take your baby and change it in some way.
Absolutely. Some people get very upset. But I think with Bruce, it wasn't so much changing the music as setting it on the keyboard in a slightly more comfortable way, or just changing the register a bit, things like that, rather than actually messing with his creations. It was just, as I say, making it fit better. That's all. They weren't major things.
What is a prelude in terms of symphonies and concertos and whatever?
That's a good question. We've been talking about that because Bruce has had a class and they've been studying preludes, and we were trying to work out what it is. Some of it must be short pieces that you can teach. Rather than giving a student a 20-minute sonata, you can give them a 2-page prelude.
Okay.
After that, none of us were quite sure what it means, really.
Well, by definition, it seems like it should lead to something else.
Right. It's a prelude.
they
to
don't.
something.
But they
Yes.
stand on their own,
Yeah.
at least on your 12
That's right.
from the Paris set.
They tend to be experimental forms, I think, in the sense that composers use them, the prelude, as a short composition in which to realize the possibilities of one principal idea. So you take one theme and then work it and work it and work it, but not necessarily to develop it like you would in a sonata, but to experiment with it, to play with it. It's really a free opportunity to play freely with a piece of
Or
music.
even just to say that one idea, not even to do much, just say, here's an idea, and then stop.
And then stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing that's happened a lot is because they're sets of 12 or 24, they tend to use the keys, to go through key sequences, and then make up sets so that you can then play, well, whatever you like, really. You can play all 12 or make up a group. But to say what a prelude is, difficult question.
Do you have a favorite of your 12 preludes, Bruce?
No, I don't. I think they're I like them equally. I think we've been touring with number 2 and several of the others.
2, 3, and 10.
Yeah, maybe 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one should we share with the audience, do you think?
I think put on number 8. That's a nice
8,
one.
yeah.
Okay.
That's a nice busy little number.
All right. We have it ready to go. There we have Bruce Mahin's Prelude number 8 from the collection Preludes of Days of, right, of Paris. I do not know French, but figured that one out all by myself. And they come in sets, and you don't really name them, you just number them. Do any pianist/composers name their preludes?
Oh, well, Debussy, famously.
Okay.
He wrote them and then gave them titles afterwards. But I suppose Bach, he didn't. No
names.
No. And Shostakovich didn't. Chopin didn't. No, most people just write a set of preludes, really, and leave it at that.
Okay, and that's what Bruce did.
Yeah.
And here
They're
it
just
is.
intended to be light pieces. They're not meant to be weighty, monumental, profound works. Really, I think
They're little short mouthfuls, really.
Okay.
Of different tastes,
Uh-huh.
rather than a complete meal. They're like a Spanish tapas. You have a little taste from 12 different dishes.
That's
nice.
profound.
I like
I like
I don't know about
that.
profound, but
Wow. And are you going to do additional preludes? What do you have as a composer on your plate?
Well, I've been working with a vocal ensemble in Scotland called the Scottish Voices. There are 4 women, 2 sopranos, 2 mezzo-sopranos, and I've got a work that was just completed that we'll be recording this coming summer for Scottish Voices plus vibraphone. And we've also got a prior recording called Music from 3 Continents that was those singers plus harp. And another CD actually coming out this coming year that involved Kevin Boyer, who's a very famous organist in Scotland, playing with the Scottish Voices as well. So I've been really working with the Scottish Voices quite a bit, and Graham and I have been focusing on Scottish Voices plus harp, plus organ, plus percussion, is what we've worked up to this point.
Wow. Not only just the initial thought of what to put on a blank piece of paper, but you're planning all these things, plotting things for the future, and have your hands in all kinds of stuff. Where do those ideas come from? How do you in your exploration of what you can do as a label owner, as a producer, as a writer? It seems like the sky's the limit.
Well,
I think it is.
It is, in a
It
way.
is.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think most people, if you ask most artists, whether they're visual artists or clay potters or composers, they would say, I just have to do this. This is just, I have no choice. I just get up in the morning and this is what I have to do. And if we had a choice of doing something that was easier, that maybe we would do that. But this seems like what we just have to do, and so we do it.
It would be fun driving a train, I have to say.
I hope to do that someday myself. Yeah.
And somehow there's got to be a way to combine that with music, isn't there? A piano on a train.
Well,
Well, there's a certain rhythm in the tracks and the trains going by.
Oh, we
isn't
did.
there, you know?
I did a whole afternoon back whenever it was National Train Day. And when I got trying to find things in the library, all kinds of composers wrote all kinds of, particularly in the mid-19th century when rail stations were opening across Europe and new things were coming about.
that magnificent piece by Honegger, isn't there? Pacific
Yes,
231.
yes.
A
I-
few
I-
pieces like that,
That's a
yeah.
great piece.
Discovered all those things, and we had a ball doing that
Yeah,
all
wonderful.
afternoon. Yeah. You handed me something,
I did.
and what is it?
Well, one of the things that I've enjoyed discovering, one of the types of music, was Spanish music,
Ooh,
which I didn't know an awful lot about. I mean, I'd heard it, but never really played it and studied it. And then when I got going, I got completely bitten with it and ended up making a huge pile of these things. So I thought it'd be nice to hear one of Albanith's pieces from Iberia, called Triana, which is number 3 on this disc.
Okay. We can do that. Martin Jones at the keyboard here on WVTF's Weekend Classics. Our guests are pianist Martin Jones and Professor Bruce Mahin from Radford University. And here is the Albanese. Martin Jones at the keyboard, and the music of Albanese. Is that Castilian? Do I have to say Albanese?
Well, let's go for that. That sounds good.
I have to do a couple of things here. I hate taking time away, and our time is slipping away very quickly. But we'll wrap things up here in a moment with Martin Jones and Bruce Mahin on Weekend Classics from WVTF.
The votes have been counted and a new president elected, but the work is just starting.
We have seen that our nation is more deeply divided than we thought.
Now it's time for America to bind the wounds of division.
We are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country.
Reflections and moving forward on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
All Things Considered coming up in just a few minutes here on WVTF.
Support for our broadcast day comes from the Roanoke Symphony Orchestra, presenting Holiday Pops with Joy Lynn Jacobs, December 2nd. Details at the Member One RSO box office and rso.com.
If you want great music and journalism with you wherever you go, the WVTF Radio IQ app for iOS devices is all you need. Download it on your iPhone or iPad for free in the App Store. For more information, visit WVTF.org or radioiq.org.
Well, our time has just gone so quickly, and we'll do this again. I promise everybody in the room and everybody listening, but we were talking about what a point to make, and Martin Jones wants to encourage programmers, whether you're putting on a concert program or playing on the radio, or to include the works that, aside from the old workhorses, right?
To make a nice musical sandwich, really, to have the regulars on the beginning and the end of the program, and just something in the middle that people may not know but would really enjoy if they heard it, but wouldn't go to the concert specifically to hear it because they wouldn't know about it. Mm-hmm. Or if it was a whole concert of unknown pieces, they wouldn't go to the concert. It would be too much. But to make a mix.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And come to the concert tomorrow at 3 o'clock at Washington and Lee University, and Monday evening at 7:30 at Virginia Tech, and hear Martin play.
And then you'll be off to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, doing some other, and Christopher Newport also. So we wish you great success and
thank you very much.
Enjoyment here in our area while you're here. And do come back and see us real soon.
Well, thank you very much for having us both. We've enjoyed ourselves.
It's been a true honor and a thrill, and I'm sure our audience appreciates this opportunity as well. It's why I wanted to do it. The more I had made a little excuse to Bruce about we have some new equipment and things, and I didn't know if we wanted to make anything complicated. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, we're just going to sit and talk. There's nothing complicated about that, and we really wanted to everybody to get to enjoy meeting you and hearing your observations.
Thank you very much.
I think it turned out well, and we sure appreciate you and wish you well. We've got news on the way